Good morning, y'all, and welcome back to the channel. Thanks for joining me. So we're here back in Texas now at home after our long epic trip to Maine and back. And for those of y'all that followed along this year, thanks for joining us on our trip. And for those of you that are new here, you've got some catching up to do because it was a long epic trip. It was also our most expensive trip yet. So just how long was this trip? Well, our trip to Maine took us 11 months and we saw 20 new states. We traveled a total of 8,163 miles, and that's just the miles the RV moved. The truck traveled close to 22,000 miles. We got to explore 14 new national parks and National Park Service properties. We did 103 non-national park adventures, and we stayed at 43 different RV parks on this trip. And boy, was it an amazing trip. It was actually a lot better than we could have ever planned. We saw so many new things that we never expected, and lots of things that totally changed our outlook on certain parts of this country. But before we talk about how much it cost to do this epic trip, let's do a quick recap of our year. One of our biggest challenges of this trip to Maine is we have to figure out the timeline. That's because Maine is very far north, and very far north usually means lots of winter. Us being from Texas, we didn't want to get there too early and be in the winter, and we didn't want to get there too late and also be in the winter. So we had to plan it out so that we arrived in Maine in July, had enough time to enjoy Maine, but it also gave us enough time to get back home from Maine before winter caught up to us. So our year started in January, and we decided to stay in Texas because we needed winter to get out of our way. So we spent most of January and February hanging out in Fredericksburg, Texas. We went out to Big Bend, and we finished up our time at home in New Braunfels before hitting the road. So we got ready to leave Texas, and our first stop is a detour to Memphis, Tennessee, where we had to fix our slide. And this is really the start of our trip, which is funny because we started our trip to Maine fixing a slide, and we ended our trip from Maine with a broken slide. After our slide was fixed, our first stop was Tennessee. This was our first new state. We explored Nashville, and then we moved on to Pigeon Forge. We left Tennessee and headed to West Virginia, and this is one of those states we got there too early because most of West Virginia doesn't open until April 1st, and we were there before that. But we did get to enjoy the New River Gorge National Park. Our next stop was North Carolina. We got to explore the NASCAR Hall of Fame, as well as the original home of the Blue Store. Our next stop was Williamsburg, Virginia, and it was all about America and the Revolutionary War. There was so much to do there. We actually shot a video every single day for a week when we were there. If you missed that one, go check it out. Our next stop was our first major city on this trip. We went to Washington, D.C., and if you've never been there, it is amazing. We had this idea that we would hate Washington, D.C. One of our best experiences of this entire trip. Washington, D.C., if you've never been there, go check it out. It's all about America and remembering everything that made America what she is today. After our time in Washington, we needed a break. So we headed over to Rehoboth Bay, Delaware, and we hung out on the beach for a week. It was still too cold to swim, but we did hang out in the heated pool that the resort had. Next up, we headed to Cape May, New Jersey. We went whale watching unsuccessfully, and we started our lobster tasting for this trip. Next up, our most epic stop of this entire trip, New York City. If you'd asked me when this trip started what I thought about New York City, I'd have told you it's not somewhere I want to go. Well, after going to New York City, it's somewhere I definitely want to go. So much so, we could go back at any time for as long as we possibly can stand because New York City, it's awesome. Next up, Mystic, Connecticut. We spent Memorial Day weekend hanging out in Mystic, and we got to explore the Mystic Seaport, but it was still a little on the cold side for pools. After Connecticut, we head over to Rhode Island, and this is where we start to swim in non-heated pools. Now it's June, but for us people from Texas, it is still freezing. We're also still testing out the lobster. Boston, Massachusetts, and this is where we had family come visit us. We went exploring Plymouth Rock, we got to go whale watching and see some whales, and we explore all of downtown Boston. We're also still tasting lobster. And then we finally made it to Maine. Our first stop in Maine is Old Orchard Beach. We hung out on the boardwalk and the beach, and we got to spend some time with our friends Casey and Kristen. And then the pinnacle of the trip, we made it to Bar Harbor, Maine. We spent the 4th of July there, we spent my birthday there, and we ate more than our fair share of lobster. That's why we're doing all that testing. We wanted to make sure when we got to Maine that the lobster from Maine is actually the best lobster. And it was. We also got to go on an epic airplane ride around Acadia National Park with one of our viewers. Thanks, Greg. And we just had a great time enjoying our trip to Maine. The first stop on the way home is New Hampshire. And New Hampshire was the biggest surprise of this whole trip. It's like they took Wyoming, Colorado, and Montana, combined them into a very small state and hid it in the Northeast, and no one knows how awesome it is. So if you're wondering if you should go to New Hampshire, the answer is yes. Yes, you should go to New Hampshire. After New Hampshire, we headed right next door to Vermont. And Vermont's a lot like New Hampshire, but a lot less rocks and a lot more trees, but just as beautiful. After Vermont, we head back to New York, but this time we stay far from the city. We explore everything else that New York has to offer, more specifically what they call upstate New York. We hung out in Watkins Glen and Niagara Falls, and New York and New York City are two very different things with two very different experiences. But New York by far is a very awesome state to visit. Welcome to Cleveland, Ohio, where we spend Labor Day with some of our viewers showing us all the sights. We even got to explore a national park that we didn't even know existed right outside of Cleveland. Now our next stop was Michigan, and we just crossed into Michigan so we get our sticker, because we know you need to give Michigan its entire trip because the Upper Peninsula we hear is amazing. But we stopped in Detroit. We got to explore all of Motor City, and of course we couldn't go there without exploring the Henry Ford museums and seeing how they build F-150s. Our next stop was Michigan City, Indiana, where we got to explore Indiana Dunes on the banks of Lake Michigan, and we also got to go explore Chicago. Chicago was another one of those cities. We weren't sure if we were gonna like it, but we were so glad we did because Chicago is pretty awesome. Next up was Indianapolis, Indiana, and by this point in our trip, we are starting to get tired and we need a break. And not only do we need a break, we also got sick at the same time. So we actually didn't do a single thing in Indianapolis, but rest and recover. We leave Indianapolis, Indiana, and we head over to Cincinnati, Ohio. And this is when fall starts to show up. We finally get to see the changing of the colors and the leaves, and we also start to see our first freezing temperatures at night. And then we meet our second favorite state from this trip, Kentucky. Kentucky was an amazing state. Our first stop was Lexington, where we got to go explore the Ark Encounter. We got to check out all the horses in the area, and Alicia got to go explore the Maker's Mark Distillery and learn how they make it and do some tasting. Next up, we head over to Louisville, Kentucky, where we're met by Phil and Lolo and Thomas and Beverly. And we have family in town and we have a great time. We start off with the Louisville Slugger Museum, we take them to the Kentucky Derby, and we finish up taking them to the Jim Beam Distillery so they can see how they make Kentucky bourbon. And for our last stop in Kentucky, we head down to Cave City, where we get to see how they make Corvettes. We check out a Dino Land Museum, and we check out Mammoth Cave National Park. And our last state of this trip is one of my favorites, or at least my favorite to say. It's Springfield, Illinois. And we got to hang out with Honest Abe and see all the things that he did. And that's it. That was our trip. When we left Springfield, Illinois, we headed back towards Texas with a small stop for Thanksgiving in Branson, Missouri, but we made it back home here in time for Christmas. So how much did this epic trip to Maine and back cost? Well, before I tell you, I'd like to thank today's sponsor and the sponsor of this video, RV Mattress by Brooklyn Bedding. So what is an RV mattress by Brooklyn Bedding? Well, let me tell you. RVmattress.com is a Brooklyn Bedding brand known for top of the line comfort and quality. Plus they have a factory in Arizona and ship conveniently to you for free anywhere in the US. They offer different firmness options, heights and dimensions, even RV specific and non-traditional sizes to fit right into your lifestyle. When we got our RV and we decided to live in it full time, one of the first things we knew we had to do was get rid of the stock mattress. And our research led us to RV Mattress by Brooklyn Bedding. And we actually purchased this with our own money, and we're telling you guys about it for over a year before they decided to reach out and sponsor us. We went with the Signature Hybrid in the RV King because it fits into our RV King space, and it is the the most comfortable mattress we've ever owned. And when it came time to upgrade our kids' rooms, it was a no-brainer to go with RV Mattress by Brooklyn Bedding because you know the comfort and the quality that they provide. So we ripped out the Happy Jack bed system and installed a second queen-size bed platform, and we went with the Dream Foam Essential Memory Foam in the RV queen size in the 8-inch model because it gives our kids 2 queen-size beds to enjoy, and it also works with the Happy Jack bed system when the beds are stowed for travel days. We know choosing a new mattress can be a big decision. That's why RV Mattress by Brooklyn Bedding offers a 120-night sleep trial, and they back it up with a 10-year warranty. RV Mattress by Brooklyn Bedding delivers your mattress to your door anywhere within the United States. Plus it comes rolled up in a box and it's super easy to set up yourself. And the best part about all this is Brooklyn Bedding has their own factory in Arizona. That means they're able to use premium materials at a reasonable price with no middleman to bring up the cost. And we're not the only ones who love this brand. RV Mattresses Dream Foam Essential Memory Foam just won Good Housekeeping's 2023 Family Travel Award. Good job, Brooklyn Bedding. We love our RV Mattress by Brooklyn Bedding, and we think you would too. If you're in the market for a new mattress, head over to rvmattress.com. You can check the link in the description below or go to rvmattress.com/Paving New Paths to save yourself 25% on your new mattress with the code Paving New Paths. Once again, thank you to rvmattress.com for sponsoring this video and their continued support of this channel. Now let's get into how much we spent on our trip to Maine and back. For the sake of keeping it simple, I'm only going to talk about the cost associated with RVing and traveling in this video. Because we all know, we all have those costs that no matter what you're doing are still going to happen, like health insurance, car insurance, cell phones, internet, that sort of thing. So we're just going to talk about all the costs associated with driving our truck and our RV around this country on our trip to Maine and back. Our most expensive category of this year was RV parks, to the tune of, sorry, I have to read this, it's a big number, $24,638.23. We spent a lot of money on RV parks, and that's because RV parks in general are very expensive in the Northeast. But we also learned that RV parks as a whole have gone up everywhere. We also spent a lot more on some of these parks because we wanted to make sure when we got to the Northeast, we never encountered any drama with our big rig. So we purposely seeked out RV parks that were very big rig friendly. We also wanted to ensure that our kids had a great time because this was an epic trip. So from Memorial Day to Labor Day, we stayed at some very resort type places. We also stayed at some places that had the resort price, but not the park to match it. But nonetheless, we had a great time and the cost reflects it. Our second most expensive category was groceries. And since we do travel full time, groceries are going to be included in this list because we get to buy groceries in 20 different states, and we saw how the prices got more expensive the further north we went. Now, little did we know that the prices were getting very expensive everywhere because we thought the prices we were paying were because we were in the Northeast. Well, when we got to Maine, we called Phil and told him about the prices we were paying, and he informed us that that was also the prices they were paying back in Texas. So what we thought was the Northeast problem was just the entire USA has gotten more expensive. But we spent a total of, sorry, I have to read this one too, $14,737.88 on groceries. That is a lot of food. And when we were eating our groceries, we were eating out to the tune of $8,956.79. That is a whole lot of money spent on food that we didn't make at home. But it was for science because remember, we were testing all the lobster all the way to Maine and back. We had to make sure that we knew that the lobster in Maine was the best. And we did our best to find out because we spent a whole lot of money tasting it. We also tried to explore all the local cuisines and all the places we visit because we never know when the next time we're going to be there. So we want to make the most of the experience when we're there. But we spent a whole lot of money eating out. Next up, how much we spent on diesel on this truck. We spent $7,807.66 on diesel for this truck. And I will say, the Northeast, it's very expensive on diesel. We averaged $4.50 or more, paying as high as $5.50 in Maine. And as soon as we got back to Texas, we haven't paid above $3.29 since we've been home. So that's one of those things. It's definitely cheaper to buy diesel in the South. Maintenance. We spent $7,665.91 on maintenance. But that's just the money we spent while we were on the road. You guys know when we came home, we had a laundry list of things to do. And you're gonna find out in the next video on Sunday that there's an even bigger problem we haven't told you about that's gonna cost even more money. So we have no idea how much maintenance is gonna cost, but it's well beyond the number I just told you. And that's why when we finally get done fixing all the things with this RV, we're gonna make an entire video of how much it costs to fix and maintain and repair this RV on our trip to Maine and back. Next up is adventures. We spent $6,642.72 on adventures. We really had a great time on adventures, but the East Coast, specifically the Northeast, there's more things that involve money to do than there is free activities. Like normally when we go out west, we spend most of our time enjoying the national parks, and that's because you buy the annual pass, costs you 80 bucks, and essentially exploring the national parks, it's free. Well, in the Northeast, there are national parks, but most of the time they have an additional fee to enter. And also there's a lot of history and things to do in the area that all cost money to do. We had a great time, but in the Northeast, it costs more to do things, and there's less things that are free when you're out exploring. Next up, propane. We spent $531.03 on propane. We did a pretty good job of trying to stay out of the cold weather, but on the way there, we ran into it, and on the way home, it caught up to us and was chasing us back to Texas. But that's how much we spent trying to keep our RV warm. Buddy, that's right, Buddy cost us $466.72 this year. There was actually nothing wrong with Buddy. That was just a normal year for him. That was his annual checkup, all his supplies, and his food for the year. Doctor visits. That's right, we had to go visit a doctor on our trip. Remember in Indianapolis, Indiana, and I told you we got worn down and sick and didn't do anything at all? Well, that's when we had to go visit the doctor. Me and Alicia, we got over it, but the kids, they had to get a prescription, and that cost us $380 for the kids to get over the bug they had. Tolls. Now you guys warned me I would be paying a lot for tolls in the Northeast, and you weren't lying. We spent a total of $353 on tolls. Now most of that was in the Jersey, New York area, but there is toll roads everywhere in the Northeast. And if you find yourself in the area with the big rig, you're oftentimes going to choose a toll road because it means you're going to stay off these small roads and you won't find yourself in any situations because you're on a road you shouldn't be with a big rig. Laundry. We spent $105 on laundry this year. Now we do have a washer and dryer in our RV, but there were several RV spots on this trip that we checked in and found out we didn't have full hookups like we thought. Full hookups in the Northeast can sometimes just mean water and electric, no sewer. So when we stayed at parks that had no sewer, we had to use their on-site laundry facilities, and that cost us $105. So when you add that up, what does it come out to? Well, it comes out to a very large number and the most we've ever spent on an entire trip. Now granted, we've never taken a trip that lasted 11 months, but this is by far our most expensive adventure we've ever been on, to the tune of $72,284.94. And that is just the cost associated with the truck and the RV and us traveling down the road. That doesn't include our normal everyday expenses that we're gonna have, like cell phones, insurance, and all that stuff. But in total, our trip to Maine cost us $72,000. So we did a recap of the trip and we told you how much we spent. Now let's have some parting words, observations, or just simple context about some things I learned on our trip. This was a great trip and one of our biggest trips yet, and we covered a lot of ground. But will we ever do something like this again? Absolutely not. We enjoyed this time, but we would never try to be gone for 11 months and cover 20 states ever again in one try. We had a great time doing it, and we did it because it was a goal of ours. We made the plan and we worked the plan. But next time around, I think we're gonna try to do a lot less than what we did this year. Also, the Northeast is really far away, and since we're from Texas, we wanted to make the most of our time there. So we tried to do and see as much as we could. The next time around, I think we would just do planned adventures where we beeline it to where we wanna be and explore the area. Like for example, next time we go to New York, I think we'll just leave Texas, drive straight to New York, and spend an entire summer in the country of New York, or say New Hampshire or Kentucky. Any one of those states, I think next time around, we would make a dedicated trip where our drive starts us there, we spend all the time we want to spend there, and then we come back home. Instead of just passing by and giving each place a week to 10 days, we would give some of our favorite places a month or two. Like I could spend the whole summer in New Hampshire or Kentucky or even upstate New York. Those will all be amazing trips on their own. We also learned that we can do some short stays, but not very many in a row. Like we did 3 7-day stays and it took us 2 weeks to recover from that. So I think moving forward, we're more like a 14-day stay type of family. But this trip, it required us to move because we had a lot of things we were trying to see. And honestly, when you try to see 20 states in 11 months, you always have to be on the move. Otherwise, winter will get you. So what's next for us? Well, in Sunday's video, you're gonna find out why our 2024 travel plans might be up in the air. We actually don't know we're gonna be on the road again, but we still have 10 states we need to see. 2 are out because it's Alaska and Hawaii, and more than likely, the truck and the RV will not be a part of either one of those trips. But we still have 8 states in the lower 48 we need to see. One option is to head west. We need to see Nevada, California, Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. Plus, a trip out west gives us a chance to see things we loved on the way there and things we loved on the way home. So the out west trip is one I'm leaning towards because I get to revisit some of my favorite places, see new places, and catch some of my favorite places on the way back. Our second option is to go back up the Midwest because we need to go give Michigan a full-on adventure because we know the Upper Peninsula is amazing. We want to go up there, so our trip would likely start at Michigan. We go through the Upper Peninsula, check out Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, and a little more of Illinois, and then we come back home. So what do you guys think we should do? We had this crazy idea we would do both those trips next year. Like we would leave Texas in March and do a 3-month trip out west, catch all those states, be back home in Texas for a little bit of the summertime, and about midsummer, head off again to the Midwest, catch all those states, and get back to Texas by Thanksgiving. So we would accomplish all the lower 48 next year in 2 smaller trips, but more deliberate trips, if you know what I mean. We would have our highlights there, we would catch the highlights, do the adventuring, and then get back home. But our idea for that or any travel next year may be up in the air. So you guys will find out on Sunday what we're dealing with and why we don't know if we're gonna hit the road next year or how much it's gonna cost for us to hit the road. You guys let us know in the comments. What do you think is going on with our RV that is going to change all of our travel plans? Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for hanging out with me. We love you, and we'll see you in the next one.